This video is part 2 in a series about chords. This video is all about chords with more than 3 notes. As you will remember from the first video, a chord must have at least 3 notes. While there are always exceptions of one sort or another in music, these 3 notes are usually a third away from one another. A C major chord consists of C, E, a third higher from C, and a G, a third higher from E. Whether a chord is major or minor depends on the distance between the lowest note and the third, the middle note. Listen to the C major, the first chord shown being built. Then listen to the A minor chord, the second chord being built, both from the bottom up. Chords can also consist of 4 notes, 5 notes, 6 notes, even 7 notes. In theory, you could have even more notes added to make up a chord. For the most part, when you get past 5-note chords, the sound starts to become dissonant and less pleasing to the ears. Plus, the most notes you have in a chord that you can play on the piano in one hand is 5, assuming you have 5 fingers. The most common 4-note chord one hears is the 7th chord. It is called this because the 4th note of the chord is a 7th above the root. In an A minor chord, which consists of A, C, and E, we add a third above the E, a G. This G is a 7th higher than the root, A. You will note that the G can also be described as being a whole step lower than the root if the root were played again an octave higher. This interval, from the A on the bottom up to the G, is known as a minor 7th. When notating a 7th chord like this, we simply add the number 7 to the chord name. So an A minor chord with a 7th would be notated as AM7, or lowercase m, or A lowercase min 7, or A minus 7, sometimes called A-7. When we add a number or other modifiers besides the m, min, or dash, and others we'll learn later, we call it a suffix. The 7 is a chord suffix. Listen to the A minor 7 chord being built from the bottom up. Whenever you see a chord symbol with a 7 added, either to a major or minor chord, and there are no other modifications to the chord, nothing changed in the suffix, the 7th is a minor 7th higher than the root. To make an A major chord, an A7 chord, we add a G, a minor 7th higher than the A. To make an A minor chord, an A minor 7th chord, we add a G, a minor 7th higher than the A. In that chord symbol, AM7, which is often said as A minor 7, the minor refers to the A chord, not the 7th. Let's look at this with the C7 chord. This is a major chord with a 7th added. Just like with the A minor 7th chord, we add a note a third higher than the 5th, a B. But instead of a B natural, it has to be a B flat. Why, you might ask? This is where a good knowledge of intervals comes into play. A B natural is not a minor 7th above C, it is a major 7th above C. Any chord with nothing more than a 7 added to the chord name is always referring to a 7th that is a minor 7th up from the root. I'll say that again. Any chord with nothing more than a 7 added to the chord name is always referring to a 7th that is a minor 7th up from the root. We could also describe this as being a whole step lower than the root if the root were the top note. If we want a C chord with a B added, we need to make changes to the suffix. More on that in a future video. But first, we have a C major chord, C, E, G, and we add a 7th, a whole step lower than the root, a B flat above the G. This gives us a C7 chord. Listen to the chord being built from the bottom up. A G7 chord is similarly built as with the A minor 7th or C7 chord. Start with a G, add a major third above, a B, add a perfect fifth higher than the root, a D, also can be described as being a minor third higher than the third, and finally the minor 7th up from the root, the F. Listen to the G7 chord being built from the bottom up. In addition to adding a 7th, we can also add 9ths, 11ths, 13ths to a chord. Sticking with the C7 chord as our starting example, to add the 9th, we need to add a third higher than the B flat, a D. For the 11th, we need to add a third higher than the D, an F. For the 13th, we need to add a third higher than the F, an A. If we go any further in this pattern, we would start repeating the C chord unless we alter the notes, say make the 15th a C sharp. For our purposes, we won't go any further than the 13 chord. You may have noticed a pattern once we started adding notes above the 5th of the C major chord. From G to B flat is a minor third, from B flat to D is a major third, from D to F is a minor third, from F to A is a major third. This alternating minor-major pattern applies no matter what your root is. While the third can be minor or a major third higher than the root, that gives us major or minor chords, the 5th is always a perfect 5th in major or minor chords from the root. From the 5th up, this alternating minor-major pattern stays true in all chords, major or minor. Listen to these chords. Notice that it starts to sound dissonant as we get past the 9th chord. Next time, we introduce the other two types of chords, diminished and augmented chords. In future videos, we will talk about inversions, voicings, variations to chords with more than 3 notes, and added notes, and more.